lost in your heartbeat, in the thrill of it all.
Okay, let's see if I can get through this review. I wanted to do it about 2 hours ago, but let's start off with the fact that this is Last Girl Ghosted by Lisa Unger. It has been on my TBR probably since it came out. This book, I cannot say that it's bad. I wasn't thrilled with it. I think it's because I never connected with the main character, Wren. I appreciated the maturity of the writing, and I appreciated the maturity of the subject matter, because that is something that you tend to miss when you read a lot of YA, like me. And not that YA is juvenile, but it's a different audience, and it's a different narrator, different main character. Their focuses and their views on the world are just gonna be different than an adult's. I really love a smartly written book, something with a lot of layers. And I think the most surprising part of this book that I liked was that it's actually written in the second person. I don't know if I've ever read something in the second person, and admittedly, it threw me off at first. It actually connected me to the story more than I had thought it would, because we are in Wren's head and we are experiencing her view of this other person, and this other person is the whole reason that we have a book. So I did like that, and it's something that I kind of want to experiment with now. But back to the plot. Last Girl Ghosted, at the prompting of her best friend Jax, has begun to do online dating. She is unlike most of the women out there who just want a good-looking dumb guy to have some fun with. She would rather have like a bookish guy who thinks and hikes to have fun with. Eventually, this guy ghosts her, and the rest of the book is about her figuring out why, essentially, and like who this guy is, because he's not who he said he was. We're getting to the point of why I disconnected with Wren. First, on an unrelated subject, the narration for this novel, not that it was bad, but Wren runs an advice column, and she's known as Dear Birdie. There's this point where she is at the recording studio, and she has her Dear Birdie voice, which is opposite of her regular voice. Dear Birdie is calm and soothing, and she is not like that. But the narrator is exactly like that. The narrator never changes the narration style. So I actually sped this book up, and I never do this because I do not like the sound of sped up narration. It sounds like Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers. But I had to do it because she was so slow and measured and monotoned, and I was just falling asleep. So I sped it up to like 1.5. Every time somebody else would step in the room, I would actually pause it because it was kind of embarrassing, because it sounded terrible. I was like, la, 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 and I was like, I don't want you guys to think that's how I normally listen to books, or that I'm enjoying listening to it this way. But holy cow, I was like, I can't get through this novel. How I, as per the writing and characterization, disconnected from Wren was, I don't like this idea of dating apps, and she wasn't looking for a relationship. She was just looking for people to sleep with. She would call it making love. And I'm just like, but if you're sleeping with a guy the first night you meet them, is that really making love? Because that's not what she was looking for. She was sleeping with guys that she neither knew nor liked. And so I just disconnected from this perception she had of what she was doing. And then even with Adam, the ghost in question, or the ghoster in question, before the key event happened, she had only known him for 3 months and she was in love. And this was really bothersome, really irksome for me, because she refused to see things as they were because she was in love, even though all the facts were telling her he was not who he said he was. He's not someone to be trusted, and he's not someone she should be holding on to. It was just problematic for me because I can't get into that headspace. I'm not saying any of this is wrong. I feel like a lot of this is what currently occurs within relationship these days, but that's not how my mentality works or how I choose to live. In that respect, this wasn't the best book for me. There was a review that I read who talked about pacing. The person thought that the first half had better pacing than the second half. Overall, the pacing was better in the end than I was thought it was as I was going through the novel, because I just thought it was taking forever, and largely because Wren was in denial. But then the book was done, and I was like, the book is done. So it actually moved pretty quickly, although I thought the second half moved better than the first half, and it's because Wren kind of stepped outside of her obstinance and started being more proactive. And the book is divided into 3 parts, so I prefer the second and the third parts to the first part, because the first part was like, I couldn't connect with Wren and her mindset. But we'll get into that later. She meets Adam on Torch. They meet up, have some sort of a connection. He's not necessarily the handsomest guy, but there's something between them. Their bedroom events are like, I guess, explosive. They don't go a day without seeing each other. And then comes one night where he basically appeals to her to tell her something that she's never told anybody else. Tell him a secret. She decides to divulge something about her past that we are unaware of. And the next day, they're supposed to meet up for dinner, and he never shows up. She goes to, and this is where I really started having problems. Because, okay, at first I'm like, denial. I totally get it. He was supposed to be there. He wasn't. You see that he has tried to call you, and when you try to call him back, the call goes nowhere. All right, go to his apartment. Find out, like, what's wrong. Maybe he's hurt. I don't know, maybe he doesn't have his phone, whatever. So she goes, only to find out that it was a vacation rental. For me, that is the first problem. Not the fact that I can't reach him on his phone, not the fact that he won't return text messaging. Like, for me, it's worrisome, it's anxiety inducing, but it's not something I'm gonna stress out about. But the fact that he lied about where he was living, to me, that's a red flag. And she could not accept this. Actually, I need to rewind a little bit. Fast forwarding, we learn that this private detective approaches Wren about a missing woman named Mia. He has been hired by her father to find her or find information about her. She's been missing for 9 months. He believes that she has a connection to Adam, who I believe had called himself Rafe, or maybe he was still Adam with Mia, but he just used a different last name. At this point, we also learn that there are other missing women who might have connections to Adam, all via the dating app Torch. They are Bonnie Cartwright, Mia Thorpe, and Melissa Farrow. Melissa, for me, was super interesting because she has connections to this town called the Hollows, which is where Wren hails from. And we know there's this big mystery about Wren's past. So I'm like, ooh, I likey. The other thing that connects them all is they all have tragic pasts and then came into money. Bonnie was involved in a school shooting. She knew the shooter. He came to school, he started shooting, and then we couldn't have access to her. He killed himself right in front of her face. A lot of people sued the school because it did not have proper preventary measures, like the doors to the rooms wouldn't lock. And so, the parents of the dead got money, and then people who were traumatized, like Bonnie, also got money. Mia is why we're going back to the beginning. Mia, her mother died when she was young, and then this caused her later issues in life, depression, substance abuse. And then we have Melissa, who had lost both parents in a fire, and then she came into money because she inherited their life insurance policies. But back to the beginning, we open with Mia. If I had been reading the book, I don't think this would have been as big of an issue for me. But there was just a lot of disconnectivity for me in the beginning. I didn't know who Mia was versus who Wren was. I honestly thought they were the same person, and it took me a long time to realize They were not, largely because one, Bailey shows up, and well, I was gonna say one because Bailey shows up. He's like, I'm looking for Mia. But I don't really think that was it because I hadn't glommed onto the fact that Mia was a different name than Wren. I just assumed because I had to re-listen to the beginning like 3 times. But I did not put together the fact that the Mia at the beginning was not Wren. Like, the name was not Wren. It flew right past me. They had different parent loss stories, and that's where I got extremely confused because I honestly still hadn't put it together yet. And then when I learned about Wren's parents, I was like, well, that doesn't match up with the girl from the beginning. So, the girl from the beginning, Mia. We are opening with her on this long, dark, twisty road. She has no cell phone, no connection to any kind of electronics, and she is following the directions. Rafe is like, hey, this is how you get there. Don't worry if you can't get in contact with me because we have bad service here. And then we flash back even further in her storyline where she is upset that her parents won't let her call herself like Princess Moonbeam or something. She'd had a fight with her mother about it, comes downstairs to apologize to her mother only to find her mother dead on the floor. And that is when we actually come to the present. So that's prologue. This is chapter 1. I could have done without the prologue. We do have the other women's stories interspersed throughout the novel, and I thought it would have been less confusing. It was a great opening because it's very mysterious, it's very traumatic. It's like, you get a shot right to the face, which we like that. We like a shock to the system, something to make us curious. But I didn't, and this is probably just a personal thing. You can feel free to disagree. I'm beginning to realize I don't care for prologues. I don't feel like authors necessarily do them well, or that they don't belong as a prologue. Like, they can be somewhere else. And so in retrospect, I feel like we needed that with Mia's, her creation story, like where she comes from and blah, 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 blah. Unless this had been Wren's story, because Wren's name is not actually Wren. So if we'd started with her story and then just jumped into her, for me, that would have made more sense. Because even though we didn't know it was her story, once we learn her true identity, then we're like, okay, I'm totally with it. Jumped ahead a little with her meeting Bailey, but after her date with Adam, we flash back to her and her family leaving civilization and moving to this ramshackle old house in the middle of the forest. They're going to this property because her father needs to heal. He's obviously an abusive man. He is a vet from the military, and it caused issues with him upon his return. Alcoholism, PTSD. This is just a place that he needs to go to get away from the pressures of life and just have something more simplistic. Back to the present. First red flag for me would have been going to his house only to learn it's a vacation rental and be like, that's not okay. And then we get a letter from this woman who basically has her same story. And to me, I'm thinking, okay, here's another clue. This is probably from him or from another woman, because this is a clue. This is a woman who has been through your situation. Why are you not seeing yourself in this? Or she might have seen herself in it somewhat, but not enough to have another red flag, because remember, she's in love with him. She just is unable to accept the fact that she's been ghosted and that Adam has lied to her, because she's in love with him. So she reaches out to the rental owner, who eventually gets back to her and is like, you need to call me. She does, and then he reveals to her that Adam still owes him money, but he does have some of Adam's things in storage. And so she's like, heck yeah, I will pay you for that, which I was just like, was Adam really worth that? So we're jumping a little ahead here, but she goes to meet Joe at the storage unit. He pulls out this box of stuff, and it's all pretty innocuous, except there's an article. We don't know what the article is about, but we do know that it's an article about her past, which means that Adam knows things he shouldn't. Rewind to Bailey showing up at her doorstep, introducing himself, letting her know what he's doing. She doesn't trust him, which I'm like, you trust Adam. You don't think twice about what Adam's been doing to you. But this guy who has documentation, proof as to who he is, even after you Google him, you refuse to confide in him? I just had issues with her. I did not understand her mindset. She is revealed to have this imaginary friend named Robin, who I kept waiting to be like the ghost of somebody else who had lived in the hollows, because it's set up to be this haunted house kind of vibe. And we know things are not copacetic with her dad, not copacetic with her family. And so I'm like, what if things had happened in this house? Because it's a familial house. Maybe something happened here. And so even though we think Robin is an imaginary friend, but maybe she's actually the ghost of a girl and she is going to be some kind of a savior for Wren. Not that at all, not nearly as interesting. At this point, she's presenting herself as Wren's imaginary friend from childhood. In this initial meeting, Bailey does reveal things about Mia that align with what Adam had described about his ex. So that's red flag number 3 for me. Wait a minute, this is a little much, especially considering he lied about where he lives and he knows about my past. There's something wrong here. But she doesn't do that. She just kind of lies to him and pretends that Adam was nothing more than somebody she met on Torch, which again, I'm like, what is it? Like, why are we protecting Adam? Maybe it's because of the trauma of her past, and I just don't want to read too much into that, but I could not connect with her mindset. They agree to go to where Adam's business is because she knows nothing about his life, which is red flag number 4. They find that it's like a dummy corporation. But while they're there, she is convinced that she sees Adam watching her from the business across the street. They jet set over there only to find out he's not there and he never was there. And so for me, this was a really pointless scene. I don't know what it was there for, because it makes her doubt herself, but to no avail. Adam is a smart dude. He knows how to cover his tracks. He knows how to be one step ahead. So I don't doubt he could have been there, but it went nowhere. So it's not like we picked it up in the end where he's like, yeah, I was watching you the whole time. Because we do. He is texting her from an unknown number, which again, she's like, and this is something Bailey points out, that he will not confide or trust him, but she will answer unknown numbers and she will do whatever they tell her to do. She was just a real dumb girl, in my opinion. For a smart woman, she was a real dumb girl. From here, they do go back to her place. She finally decides, I'll tell him about Adam's stuff. She does not tell him about the article, but this is where Robin is like, why do you trust him? And she admits that it's probably because he reminds her of her brother Jay. And I'm just like, okay. I think the proper question is, why don't you trust him? Because if Robin is her imaginary friend, then Robin, and this is what is established at some point in the book, Robin is everything that she wants to be but can't. So to me, that means in many ways, Robin will be the voice of reason, but she's not. So I'm like, why are we asking, why do we trust a PI and not, why are we holding on to Adam? I think that would have been the better question. We have another flashback in which the family is basically settling in, but they don't go anywhere. They are essentially turning into hill people. And the one thing that she does to entertain herself is read books. This is all fine and dandy until her dad is like, look, you need to get out. You need to get to know the land. So he takes her out and he's like, I'm gonna teach you how to hunt. And this is where she first sees Robin. And I have to admit that Robin initially took me by surprise. There is a very, very brief mention of her while Wren is waiting for Adam that first time, and she's thinking about what Jax would say about the situation versus what Robin would say about the situation of online dating. That one totally went over my head. It was a passing mention. And so then when Robin was mentioned in the scene with Bailey in her kitchen, and she's like, oh, well, why do we trust him? I was like, who's Robin? So this is where we first kind of, the genesis. That's what I meant to say earlier, the genesis story. But this is where Robin is first introduced to Wren. And we eventually learn here, a little bit of a spoiler, that Wren's real name is Robin. And then Robin renames her Wren because she's like, we can't both be named Robin. And I thought Robin was just a huge missed opportunity. With the whole Melissa thing, we learned that she had an imaginary friend, and for a moment there, I thought when we were listening to her, we were actually listening to Wren's origin story. Origin story, not Genesis. I'm never gonna get myself together. Yikes, thanks for hanging out with me. But then I was like, well, maybe Melissa is, I don't know, maybe a bit older than Wren. And so maybe Melissa's imaginary friend is Robin. So for some reason, they both know Robin. And so maybe that means that Robin isn't actually an imaginary friend. She's still the ghost. So I'm really trying to make things interesting here. And it's not happening because I'm wrong every single time. Another note concerning Wren being Robin. I was a little surprised at how early Unger revealed Wren's backstory, because she works real hard to keep it enigmatic. And then all of a sudden, like, there's the information right there. For me, what I thought was most interesting is when Wren decides to go back to her hometown, go back to that house, and she walks past Robin's grave. So again, I'm still thinking Robin was a real person. But if Robin and Robin were both Robin, who's Wren? Here's some spoilers. The person buried in Robin's grave was an occupant whose family had been living off of Wren's father's land. They were the main landowners, and then they would parcel out pieces to other, basically, like, he's a doomsday prepper. So other hillbilly doomsday preppers, like, they kind of had this whole little commune going on. The grave went to this person, and we'll get into more of that later. We come back to the present, and I liked the intention of this scene, but I felt like it was kind of pointless because there's no resolution to it. It doesn't play into the rest of the book or into Jax's character arc. Wren is woken up in the middle of the night. She's like, oh my gosh, is it Adam? It is Jax. And Jax is, like, I guess, relatively famous. And this really bothered me. I was so tired about hearing about how beautiful Jax was. But she's like model-esque, statuesque, and so cool and fashionable and barf. She had hooked up, or she had met up with someone from Instagram. He got a little too handsy with her and essentially assaulted her. Not that I have a problem with addressing this issue. It's the problem that Jax does not stand firm on her decision to ghost him, to be like, look, I was not okay with this, and I know this is not someone that I should be continue to be involved with, yet she unblocks him at some point, only to let him ghost her. Jax is supposed to be this really strong, forward-thinking, feminist woman. Why is she behaving like this? Because it's not necessarily part of her character arc she has a love interest. And so it's not necessarily that she goes from someone who makes bad romantic decisions to realizing what she has in front of her. It's like, she did this, she got burned, she went back for more, and then got burned again. We flash back to Melissa's story. Melissa, her parents died in a fire, and it's hinted that she might be at fault. She had this obsession with matches and fire. Her imaginary friend egged her on. She may have been the one who set their house on fire. In any case, she inherits their life insurance, goes to live with her grandparents. When her parents died, this is when she moved to the Hollows, because that's where her grandparents lived. Again, it was a really great opportunity to weave things together, to maybe toss a red herring in there, or be like, hey, actually these girls do know each other, or they do have a connection or something, and nothing. Like, we learned that Melissa hated the Hollows, she left and never came back. This is the point where Wren says, I'm gonna go back to the Hollows. And Jax, for some reason, has this irrational problem with her going. It's not because Wren leaves her in charge of Dear Birdie, it's because, I mean, I guess Jax has background information that we do not have yet. Knowing what she knows and being a good friend, because she was a good friend. I liked her. I liked that she was the voice of reason, that she was making Wren feel guilty for what she was doing, because Wren knew she should be listening to Jax. So I enjoyed this, but I did wonder, I was like, why does Jax care so much that Wren is going to the Hollows? Why? Because they track each other. So I was like, why does she care that Wren said she was coming back, but she's actually going in the opposite direction? Why does she care that Wren is at this motel? Why does she care that Wren is driving north when she should be driving south, because south meant she was coming home? It was a little overwhelming, a little heavy-handed, but Bailey follows Wren to the Hollows, and Wren is unaware of this, but he uses his opportunity to try to do some background work to figure out, and we get the impression that Bailey knows a lot about Wren's past as well. We just don't know how much he knows. And he just says, well, I've got resources. This whole period is when we learn about her backstory. So instead of doing all my flashback things, I'll just, let you know here. Her family, her dad murdered her mom and her brother. I mentioned he was extremely abusive. There were many moments where Jay, her brother, was like, I'm gonna kill him, and she's like, don't do it. It's kind of this circle of life where if she had let Jay kill the father never would have killed Jay and the mother, or she ends up she ends up wounding her father, and if she had not lost her nerve and had truer aim, her father never would have killed Jay. So this is this whole cyclical thing. But somebody, we know at some point, somebody had called the police, and it was the police's arrival or their sting on the compound that led to all the issues. I don't know how much the other families were involved. There are 3 other families, one of which were the Wilsons. 2 of the families didn't make it, and that the Wilson's daughter is the one who was buried. No, not her. I lied. Or did I? I don't think it was the Wilsons, because the brother ends up saying, oh, my sister's fine, we don't talk anymore. Anyways, it was the daughter of one of these other families that's buried in Wren's grave. She knew that her dad had a bunker full of weapons, and they were doing things they weren't supposed to be doing. It's this that the police come about, and they essentially were like, we didn't come in to cause problems, we just came in to investigate. My question is, she calls them, and she can't actually tell them where she lives because she never leaves. Like, she doesn't know how to get there. She gives them her name, and her father's family is from there. They're well enough known. People know where their house is. So why did it take 3 months? Because then I was like, oh my gosh, Wren was it. And then nobody arrived for 3 months. So I was like, maybe Wren wasn't it? And I didn't understand why it took so long for them to come. So she is asleep. Jay comes in. He's like, you need to get out of here. She manages to get downstairs, discovers that her dad has already killed her mom. Jay is trying to distract the dad so that Robin/Wren can sneak out behind him. But the dad he has a gun and he's all like, who called the police? Who called the police? She, who has a crossbow, is like, I called the police. So the dad turns around. She loses her nerve, turns back to Jay. She shoots him in the back, but not before he shoots Jay in the chest. And there we go. That is the whole mystery of that. There's a little bit more mystery, but I'm going to leave that spoiler for a little bit later. I guess there's a lot she's unaware of, and so she's kind of doing some research herself. There are few people who actually know her true identity. One is the old sheriff named Jones Cooper, and then the other is this woman named Joy, and she is the one who got Wren placed in a foster home. What they done is, this is when she discovers that they had stolen the identity of another person. The police or someone found this body and assumed it was Robin. So they took that girl's identity and gave it to Wren. But then Wren had her own guy from the dark web create her like a new identity, or actually maybe not. Anyways, she had the guy from the dark web erase any way of tracking her past. Speaking about the guy from the dark web, we know that Adam knows something about her, and we know that Bailey knows something about her. So then she reaches out to the guy who helped her way back when. This is just a lot of little things that had no real resolution, and this is one of them, where she forks over an unnamed amount of money in Bitcoin. And we are already given this idea that this is not a smart thing to do, because once you hand over Bitcoin, it is gone forever. Like, the only person who knows how to track this Bitcoin is the person who has like the key to unlock wherever the Bitcoin goes. Her contact is like, why are you contacting me? Because she's only supposed to contact him in like dire circumstances. She's like, people know who I am. She pays him to figure out, I guess, how people have discovered her, and he never ever gets back to her. So I'm like, so you paid $5,000 off of Adam's debt for his vacation rental, and then I'm assuming she's given this guy like $1 million in Bitcoin, and he never does anything. I'm like, again, for a real smart woman, you're a dumb girl. But she realizes that Bailey is there. Then she ends up going to his motel, snooping around his room. He catches her. This is when they really join forces, and she tells him everything she knows and gives him all the information about her past. Bailey at some point had put a tracker on her car. She is now contacted by Adam saying, meet me at this undisclosed location. Bailey's like, don't do it, which again, I'm just like, there is a point made at the end where if she hadn't done it, they probably never would have caught Adam. But still, I kept waiting, because we get this sense from her past, she's a very capable survivalist. And so I kept waiting for her to have an ulterior motive. Like, on the surface, it looks like she's just going along with things and she's too attached to him, but she actually has her own plan of attack. No, she has no plan of attack. She goes out to meet him. Well, actually, first, they had learned that there had been, in some years past, a real estate agent who had come asking to buy her family property, because even though her mother and brother are dead, her dad is in jail and he's there for the rest of his life. So he assigned everything over to her, which I thought was very interesting, because we also know that she is the favorite of the two. The fact that she almost killed him and she's the one who turned him over, he'd still sign everything over to her, and he knows her new alias? It's a little fishy for me. Bailey tracks down this real estate agent only to find out that he's dead, and that Adam, or the ghost as he dubs him, because they don't really know what his name is because he's used a number of aliases, is still there. He shoots Bailey. Bailey awakens. It was just a shoulder wound. To Jones, the old sheriff, They team up to go find Wren. Somehow, Adam was a step ahead and he knew that Bailey had put a tracker on her car. He put it on another car. Basically, she's gone. Like, they don't know how to find her. We get her perspective saying that she arrived at this undisclosed location. She finds Adam there. They have some bedroom fun. When she tries to escape, she finds that she's locked in. They do have a chit chat because she asks him about these other girls. And the whole point was he was offering them an escape because, you know, the string that was tying them all together was the fact that they had troubled childhoods. And so he was like, I was giving them a way out. I thought they all wanted this way out, this way away from everybody and everything, and they all rejected it. But love lets things go, so I let them go. They talk about her ex-boyfriend, which I don't really think I needed this. And essentially he was like the greatest ex-boyfriend, but then they got drunk one night and he tried to get too frisky with her. She was like, I'm not putting up with this. And then he gets angry with her. She almost kills him. And then this really random side note about how they're still friends. I don't know. Whatever. Just injects her with something and knocks her out. We move forward about 6 weeks. Essentially, like, they'd been fired from the job already, but now he's been essentially fired, not fired, from the detective agency, but he is still pursuing Wren's disappearance. He makes a lot of dumb moves. Like, I did not need, except that it told me that 6 weeks had passed, I did not need this whole interlude about him continuing to look for her because things were going so very fast. It felt like just surface level material that we didn't really need. And I didn't, like, as much as I liked his perspective, I didn't need his perspective. Personally, I would have preferred to have stayed with Wren and seen her in captivity because we get this whole thing about it being 6 weeks. And we see all these terrible decisions he's making and how he's putting other people in danger, only to then have her wake up and she's like, how long have I been out? I'm like, I don't know, how long have you been out? Because are we doing this rewind thing where we saw him at 6 weeks and now we're seeing you at 6 weeks, or like you, like the day after? But it doesn't make sense. The timeline does not line up. She wakes up, Adam is like, hey, you need to take a shower, you need to clean up. She does, and then he's like, I've made dinner for you. They sit down, they toast, she drinks. We cut back over to Bailey, who Jones has come to him and says, look, I've got some information. I did some digging because these people were all off the grid, but I just kind of did some looking into all the other families, especially the Wilsons who had disappeared. Here's the biggest spoiler of all. Adam is Adam Wilson, part of the Wilson clan, and he, one, is upset with Wren because he feels like she ruined everyone's lives by calling the police. Like, she ruined a good thing. And she's like, you and I had very different recollections of this time of our lives. Although she does admit, and this is where Robin ties into it, because she's had a therapist who had asked her, why is Robin still around? Robin is the part of her that she can't let go of because she connects her back to this land. And I'm like, if you are so traumatized, why are you still connected to this land? I don't get it at all. By this point, Robin is donezo, but Jones is like, hey, this is Adam, and I believe that he is living on this other plot of land. We'd already seen and learned when Wren had arrived at his house that he was living off of reclaimed land. So I guess the deal is that businesses will own property and they'll essentially destroy it they'll destroy it ecologically, and then it can be bought back and restored. So this is what he has done. And so Jones is like, I think this is where she is. It is where she is, But what we have then done is we jump back to her and she realizes she's been buried alive. So now we're back at this timeline of, if we go to Bailey at 6 weeks and then we flip over to Wren, has she just been unconscious for 6 weeks? I don't understand, because we do know that whatever was in the wine is what knocked her out so that she was buried alive. So she's not been buried alive for 6 weeks. So it was poorly done, in my opinion. And that's what I'm saying. We did not need Bailey. We did not need the fact that he's fallen in love with her and now we're watching his dogged determination to find her. I mean, I like that idea, but I didn't need it. I would prefer to have all this unveiling with Wren. Her in captivity, but kind of playing house and playing nice with Adam as he slowly reveals his secrets to her. She wakes up and these moments really threw me off. I grasped the now and the then. I grasped the inserts of the other girls' stories, but like these sudden moments where we come back to Wren were very off-putting for me. But she realizes she's been buried alive. She's able to escape. She remembers Adam revealing his true self to her. She goes to the house and she locates her gun. Bailey had tried to trick him, to kind of catfish him, and it failed. So he has come back from this catfishing attempt. She's like sitting in his kitchen or something. She has her gun. They kind of talk things through. She ends up killing him, and she had this whole revelation about how she did indeed lose her nerve with her dad because her aim is true. She could have killed him if she wanted to, but she was too afraid. And I just felt like the whole thing was a cop-out. That's essentially it. We have a resolution with the dad, which I was like, I didn't need this either. I would have preferred if the dad had died. It was a good shock to learn he was actually alive, and that for some reason he signed everything over to her. But she goes to visit him at the jail. She's like, look, I love you, but I will never be able to forgive you for what you've done. He's like, well, you loving me is enough. Ugh, gag. We also learn that she is pregnant with Adam's child. She's gonna make the best of a situation. Jax has officially moved into her home. Jax is now officially dating her coworker, and love is a brew between Bailey and Wren. And that's it. That's the book. I'm ambivalent. I liked the maturity of the writing, but this was not the book for me. Also, just in case you didn't pick this up, he had actually killed the others. They were buried next to where Wren was supposed to be buried. Don't understand Wren's attachment to him. This feeling of love that she has for him. It had only been 3 months, and for a person with attachment issues or abandonment issues, I couldn't glom on to this I love him idea. But what do you think? Especially, like, why did she sleep with him, except that apparently he's really good in bed? Like, when she goes and finds him at his cabin. It didn't make sense to me at all, unless she'd had an ulterior motive, which she did not. So, again,